So from high level architecture of Kubernetes, so we have a master node, working node, and one master node and two working nodes. Out of the master node or control plane, we are going to look into APIs. APIs. So the Kubernetes API, the core of Kubernetes control plane is the API server. The API server exposes an HTTP API that lets end users different parts of your cluster and external components communicate with one another. The Kubernetes API lets you query and manipulate the state of API objects in Kubernetes. Some examples of Kubernetes objects are pods, namespaces, config maps, and events, and secrets, and many more, many more. And most operations can be performed through the kubectl command line interface or other command line tools such as kubeadm, which in turn use the API. However, you can also access the API directly using REST calls. So open API specification. The Open API specification OAS defines a standard programming language agnostic interface description for HTTP APIs, which allows both humans and computers to discover and understand the capability of a service without requiring access to source code, additional documentation, or inspection of network traffic. When properly defined via a open API, a consumer can understand and interact with the remote service with a minimal amount of implementation logic. Similar to what interface descriptions have done for lower level programming, the Open API specification removes guesswork in calling a service. Then persistence. Kubernetes also stores the serialized state of objects by writing them into etcd. So we have seen in our, just let me show you that one more time. In master node or control plane, we have API. In addition to that, we also have etcd. So this etcd is going to store the objects, the Kubernetes objects such as pod, namespace, config, their state of these objects are into etcd in key value pairs. Then API extension. The Kubernetes API can be extended in one of two ways. The first one is custom resources let you declaratively define how the API server should provide your chosen resource API. And the second one is you can also extend the Kubernetes API by implementing an aggregation layer. This is all about API and API servers and API specification and API persistence, which is a main component of master node or control plane, which is what makes the communication possible between all the nodes and all the external communications, whichever is possible in Kubernetes cluster.